let's get it.
So I'm going to kick us off today. Rob will be joining us in about halfway through. So as always, a quick reminder, this meeting is recorded, and as attendees on the call, we love the amount of interaction and engagement we get. Let's make sure we keep it fun, respectful, and keep it, a great environment for everybody. We've got a great update and session for today. We're going to start with looking at some of the most recent blogs that we've had. First up, if you missed last month's office hours, if you missed the M365 conference, we have a blog that's dedicated to all the new sharing experience improvements that we're working on. If you want to step through that, see what it all looks like. We have a great blog around OneDrive for Mac and support for removable drives, which we'll talk about again in a moment. And then again, if you missed the conference, be sure to check out the latest episode of SyncUp at aka.ms/syncup, where Arvind and I went kind of behind the scenes for the M365 community conference, talked about our experiences, talked about all of the great announcements, and all of the good stuff. So our agenda for today, I'm going to take us through the roadmap briefly. We'll call out a couple of the big features that are coming in the next 3 to 6 months. And then I'm going to hand it over to Kayla and Lesha, who are going to talk through our topic of the month on the shortcut experience in OneDrive and how we are making improvements there. Something that we know all of you are very passionate about. We hear a lot of feedback on it, and I think it's going to be a great session. So looking at the roadmap briefly, this is the latest version of it. It's getting to the point where we need to start shrinking the text and highlighting things to make it visible. A couple of things I'll call out for all of you. First up, we just finished shipping the Request More Access feature in both the OneDrive file viewer experience and in Word, Excel, and PowerPoint Web. So this is a great experience. That means if you have only view access to a file, but you need to get more access to it, say edit, you can now request access from directly within the experience. You don't have to go find a person and ask them. It is all in the experience itself. Coming in the next 3 months, we've got audio overviews. This is a feature that was a huge delighter at M365, the ability to kind of use Copilot, kind of get that sort of podcast-esque type experience about your files. Great way to learn about your files while you're on your commute, or just, in a different way of engaging. And then, as I mentioned, we're in the process of shipping the ability to sync on Mac OS to removable volumes, external volumes. This has been one of the most requested features we've heard from our Mac customers. This is available in Insiders now, and it'll be coming to the rest of you in the near future. So I'll give folks another couple seconds while I talk to absorb all of the great features that are coming down the line. There's a lot of great stuff here. And now I'm going to hand it off to Kayla and Lesha to talk through our topic for this week.
So welcome, everyone. Today, Lesha and I will be sharing what's new with Add to OneDrive and Shortcuts and what we have coming up through the pipe. First, I'm going to cover the difference between the sync button relationship, so what some of you might know as team site sync, and folder shortcuts. Then we're going to demo some of the improvements to the folder shortcut experience specifically, and then we'll finish out by sharing some of the future improvements that are on our backlog roadmap. Just as a quick forewarning, some of the language will sound kind of clunky, and it is intentional. So when I refer to quote sync button relationships, I'm trying to be clear that I'm referring to the sync button in the web and not the sync client, because I do think that has caused some confusion in the past. So there are actually 2 ways to view collaborative folders in OneDrive. One is syncing the shared content with that sync button, and the other is folder shortcuts. So I'll share more about how each of these work and when you want to use one versus the other, and then we'll make some of these concepts a little bit more concrete during the demos. All right, so many of you are probably familiar with the sync button. So when you click the sync button in the web, the SharePoint document library or the document library subfolder or shared folder in OneDrive will be synced to the current device that you're on. Metadata for the entire library gets synced, even if you've only selected a subfolder. And so the thing to note here is that this actually does lead to heavier than perhaps needed network usage and also poorer performance on your device, because we're tracking all of the changes that are happening on the service, and we're keeping that metadata up to date in the local database for that on that device. You can find the sync button relationships on your current device only, and in File Explorer and Finder, you'll find it at the in the tenant folder, which is next to the OneDrive folder. On the other hand, folder shortcuts, they work by creating a link to the document library or shared content into your OneDrive. So only the folder that you add and its content sync. So generally, folder shortcuts are more performant than when using the sync button. The one exception here is when you add a shortcut at the root node, so then they're essentially the same. When you delete a shortcut, you remove the shortcut from OneDrive and you clean up any content on the disk, but you do leave the files that were in that shared location untouched in the cloud. Because the shortcut link is in your OneDrive, it shows up on all devices and all endpoints. So this includes web, mobile, desktop, Teams, Office, etc. And you can find these shortcuts in your OneDrive node in File Explorer and Finder alongside all of the other content that's important to you. So the improved performance and the anywhere access are really the key benefits of using folder shortcuts. And it's for these reasons that we actually do recommend using folder shortcuts, but there is a little bit of an asterisk, which I'll get into briefly. So firstly, if your organization is ready to start moving to shortcuts, we do recommend hiding that sync button if you can with the commandlet that's on that slide. Existing sync relationships won't be affected. The other thing we would suggest is that you encourage your users to start moving to shortcuts. There are a couple of ways to do this. I've listed 2 on the slide, and then we'll actually demo them later. But the gist of it is that you need to stop syncing for the site, and then you add the shortcut. But you can also start in the web, and we'll help you replace the existing syncing site with the new shortcut. There are a few scenarios for which shortcuts are not yet adequate, and those are cross-tenant, on-premises, and really long paths. And so you might be wondering what's really long and how does it affect shortcuts, but not the sync button relationships. And we'll share a little bit more about that in the next section. All right, and I'll hand that over to Lesha.
Great. I will kick us off on some demos, and then we'll go ahead and go through the future improvements. So I'm just going to go ahead and take control. And everything that we show today in the demos is already available, and we'll walk through each of the pieces individually right after the demo. So the first demo that we'll be going through is adding a shortcut quickly from a SharePoint site to your OneDrive, so you can easily access all your important shared files from your document library across all of your devices and endpoint, whether that's mobile, web, and desktop via File Explorer or Finder. There are a couple of things that I want to highlight here before I go into the demo, and things that you should watch out for as we're going through the demo is the change in the shortcut naming convention, being able to easily get back to the original location of the shortcut where it was added from, and desktop notifications letting you know that your shortcut is syncing. So let's see it in action here. Here I am in my SharePoint site, and I'm looking at all my sites that I have access to. I want to go ahead and add a shortcut to the root of this site, which is Project Jupyter, so I can get back to it faster from my OneDrive. What I'm going to go ahead and do is click on Add Shortcut to OneDrive. And you can see below, I quickly get a confirmation saying that this shortcut was added to my OneDrive. Now, let's switch over to what this looks like in OneDrive so that you can see all of your shortcuts in your My Files node. Here, I see that that shortcut is added, and I can easily distinguish that from other folders using that shortcut icon. And even in the sharing column, we show you where the original location of that shortcut is so that you can quickly get back to the original location where the shortcut was added from. Now, when I go ahead and open this shortcut, I see the catalog folder that is similar to the site that it was added from, just ensuring that the shortcut carry forwards all the content that's in that folder. And I'm also going to go ahead and see how this shows up in File Explorer by looking at the Activity Center and see that it's processing some changes. When I go ahead and open it in File Explorer, we'll just see that in a minute. And you can see that same shortcut added. And also you can see this notification confirming that this shortcut is syncing to your device. When I open it, I see all of the same content, which is that catalog folder that we showed you both on web and the original location of that document library. And if you see in the folder path name, you can see the name of the site that it was added from, making it super easy for you to identify where the shortcut came from. Now, this was your demo for adding a shortcut from a document library. I'm going to go ahead and quickly break down some of the pieces that we just showed you. One is the naming convention. Now, when you add a shortcut from a site or somebody else's OneDrive, you'll see either the site name appended with the folder name or the person's OneDrive that you added the shortcut from. You will see this change on all OneDrive endpoints, whether that's web, mobile, Windows, through File Explorer or Finder. This change is already available now. And I also do want to call out that some of you have mentioned this known issue of longer path names, and we'll get right to it at the end of this presentation about what we're doing. All right. The other part that I want to highlight here is we do now show this notification from your desktop saying that your shortcut has started to sync. You'll get this both in File Explorer and Finder. And we're also making an update to make sure that all of your shortcut notifications you're able to see all of them, irrespective of reaching that max number of notifications in the day. Now, the next flow that I want to take you through is removing a shortcut in File Explorer. Couple of things to highlight here. Just like we show you a notification when you add a shortcut, we also will show you a notification when you remove it. And there are a couple of options that we'll show you in terms of how to clean up your shortcuts in File Explorer. And the last thing, deleting or removing a shortcut from your File Explorer does not delete the original content where the shortcut was added from. Here, just for the sake of this demo, I have gone ahead and added all of my shortcuts in this blue folder called Shortcuts. So when we remove it, we'll see the shortcut, this folder being empty. There are two simple ways to remove your shortcut. The first one is by just quickly going into your commands and hitting the remove shortcut command. Here, as soon as I do that, you'll see this notification showing that your shortcut is being removed. And you'll also see this page refresh with your shortcut gone from this folder. The next way to do this is by deleting that shortcut. There are a few changes in this dialog that we're going to go ahead and update. But the main thing that I want to call out here is that even when you delete the shortcut, it does not delete the files from the original location where the shortcut was added from. And now that both these shortcuts are deleted from my File Explorer, I'm going to go ahead to Web and refresh where these shortcuts were originally there, and you can see those shortcuts no longer exist. And you can also go back and see that the original location of where the shortcut was added from still exists. Now, a couple of things that I want to call out here is this notification. You will see this notification show up when your shortcut is removed. This is already available now. And as I called out, all of your shortcut notifications will be seen by you, no matter how many we show them in a day. All right, I'm going to pass it off to Kayla for some of our more demos and the future section.
Awesome. Thanks, Lesha. All right, so I got two more demos. One of them is Move Shortcut, and I actually see that some folks are mentioning this in the chat. One practice that we do know some organizations use is that they move shortcuts around within their OneDrive for better organization. One thing to be careful of there is that if you do nest shortcuts, you are increasing that path length. In my OneDrive, I can select my shortcuts and I can click the Move To button. I can do this in the web. I can actually also do this in File Explorer. I then will create a new folder. So I'll click the new folder button, and I'm going to make this folder blue so it jumps out. And then I can name the folder anything I want. So we'll go with shortcuts. That new folder gets created, and then I'll move the shortcuts there. You can see in the bottom, there's a little notification that the items are being moved, confirmation they've been moved. And then when I go into that folder, I will see the 2 shortcuts that I just moved there. I can also go to File Explorer, and you will also see that in my OneDrive, I have that folder and the 2 shortcuts are there as well. All right, the last demo is how to replace your existing sync button relationships with shortcuts. This is necessary because we don't allow you to add shortcuts for folders that are already syncing with the sync button. There are 2 important things to note. One is when you stop syncing those relationships that were created with the sync button, the folders and hydrated files do remain on your device. The second thing I want to call out is you'll want to consider the scope of the shortcuts that you're adding and how they may differ from the existing sync button relationship. So if you recall from earlier, one of the benefits of shortcuts is that we sync only the metadata for the folder scope that you choose, which can be a big performance boost. So in my tenant, I have 3 document libraries syncing for 3 different sites. And let's go through the options to remove them. So in the first option, I can go to OneDrive settings, hit the account tab, and you can see all of the syncing relationships that I have. I can go over and click stop sync, and I do get a dialog that tells me that any locally available files will remain on the device and the online only files will be removed. So I can stop the sync. If I go back to File Explorer, you'll actually see in that status column that there's no cloud there because I've stopped the sync. It's not doing the syncing anymore. And I can actually now just go in and delete it. So in the second option, I can start in the web, actually, and I can add the shortcut first. So this relationship is still syncing. We go to the web. I'll click Add Shortcut to OneDrive. And you'll see here that I get a dialog, a notification actually, that the folder is already syncing, and I get prompted to replace the existing sync relationship. So if I click Replace, it'll start doing some stuff in the background. The other thing I want to call out is that if I had notifications snoozed or off, there would have also been a notification in the Activity Center. All right, so I go to File Explorer. And it does take a little bit of time, but the shortcut will eventually populate in my OneDrive, as we would expect. So I'll just give it a moment. And there it is. All right, so now I've added that shortcut. I can also go back to the settings page and confirm that that relationship has been stopped syncing. And now I can actually go over and I can also just delete this as well. One thing to call out here, though, is so the folders do get left behind, as I mentioned before. In this case, the scope folder is empty. But you'll notice if I go to my OneDrive, that scope folder has a file in it. And the reason is that file was an online only file, so it did get removed from the folder where it was a sync button relationship, but it's now here in my OneDrive. So I can also delete that folder. All right, and the last option. So let's say in this folder, we actually have 2 folders. And let's say I actually only use the catalog folder. Let's take advantage of the performance benefits that come with syncing only that folder. So if I go to the web, I'll go to the catalog folder, which it's actually empty just for this demo. I can then go click Add Shortcut. And I'll also get another notification here. And you'll notice this notification is actually slightly different from the last one. And this is because of the difference in scopes. If I go over to the File Explorer icon here, I can see where that catalog folder is currently syncing. And if I also go to the Activity Center, I have a notification here. So if I click that, it tells me that I can't add the folder because it's already syncing. So let's stop the sync to add that new shortcut. So if I click that, go to File Explorer, and you can see in the settings that it's no longer syncing that relationship anymore. So back in File Explorer in OneDrive, that shortcut should come in again. And there it is. And then if you go to the old relationship, you can see their folders are still there because they do get left behind. So one thing to note is, let's say I actually also used another subfolder in there. So right now there's only 2, but imagine there were other ones. I would need to also make sure I added shortcuts for those additional folders that I used too. All right, so just to recap, let's say you're replacing a sync relationship with a shortcut and the scopes are the same. When a user tries to add that shortcut, when that sync button relationship already exists, they can easily resolve the conflict and add the shortcut. Again, one note here is that it will leave the old sync button relationship folders and hydrated files, so you'll need to go manually clean those up if you want to get rid of them. And then similarly, when a user tries to add a shortcut to a folder that is already syncing within a sync button relationship, we'll notify them that there's a conflict, and the user can stop syncing the sync button relationship and add the new shortcut instead. And again, make sure that you add all the folders that you use within that existing sync button relationship. All right, so that wraps up the demos, and we wanted to spend some time about talking about what's next. So we are reinforcing our recommendation to use the shortcuts and Add to OneDrive by promoting it more prominently in the product experience. The Add to OneDrive or Add Shortcut to OneDrive, it offers a more seamless, modern way for users to access shared content across all devices and endpoints. We do know that there are some use cases that still rely on the sync option, so it will still be available. It's just going to be in that overflow menu. We are also going to be adding a shortcut filter in the My Files view in the web, so it's easier to get back to all of your shortcuts more quickly. That will be coming at the end of this calendar year. And then on the desktop, we are going to be adding a prompt to remove old sync button relationships. So if these libraries haven't been accessed in a year or more, we will prompt the user in the Activity Center to remove the relationship to declutter and improve performance. All right, so while we've made a lot of improvements, we know there's still more to do. This is kind of a long list. We mentioned the first 3 earlier. These are sort of known issues with some of the existing experiences that we've recently shipped. Starting at number 4, we are looking to hide the add shortcut command when offline client availability is set to no for a document library. We also have heard a lot of requests for a shortcut equivalent for Team Site Auto Mount. So it'll make it easier for you guys as admins to get your users set up with shortcuts. We are going to invest in selective sync support. And I think this was also mentioned in the chat. I haven't been quite able to keep up, but we are looking at improved UX within File Explorer and Finder. So such things such as a dedicated section for shortcuts or showing them in the tenant folder. One thing you'll see at the last bullet there is a question mark is on-prem cross-tenant. We'd love to hear from you all in terms of where this ranks in some of your asks and needs. These tend to be less common scenarios, but we know they're still very important for some of you out there. All right, so lastly, maybe a little bit of the elephant in the room. We do eventually want to retire the sync button and support for sync button relationships. And this is not to be confused with the sync client, but we do know there's still a lot more to do. So we don't have a date for this, but we will provide at least 90 days notice through our standard communication channels and also provide migration tools. We do have a quick survey at the bottom for you to let us know what you would want and need from us for that to happen. So there's a list of the features we mentioned. If there are more that you are looking for, if there are types of specific tools that you would want, please do let us know. All right. And I think that wraps up the presentation. We can open it up for questions.
Yeah, thank you, Kayla and Lesha. Let's start with questions specifically related to the topic we were just working through around shortcuts. And then in the last 10, 15 minutes or so, we'll open up to everything else. First hand I see is for Nikolai.
Hey guys, Nikolai from Coca-Cola here. Thanks for the session. One question for shortcuts is, I think someone also asked it in the chat, is the limit of 300,000 items also applicable for the shortcuts that we have in the sync? There's an article in Microsoft with limitations about OneDrive and SharePoint that advises not to sync items more than 300 for the folders with more than 300,000 items. Is the same limitation applying for shortcuts?
Yeah, so the limit is on your per instance, like OneDrive instance basis. So like if you were running, say like business 1 and business 2, say like you work with a bunch of different businesses, it's per the instance.
Okay, so that still applies. And one more thing, I saw that you said, and obviously you've been promoting shortcuts more as of lately, and looks like it's going to be the future solution. And I saw you mentioned somewhere that there's no ETA. Would you advise us to maybe start working on moving to shortcuts in a company, maybe as early as possible, maybe even from now? Or is there any advice that you can give? Should we wait a little bit for the features to be improved, or what's your take on this?
Yeah, I think it's going to be a different answer for each company and organization. If your organization is prepared to move to shortcuts, so for example, you're not using on-prem, you're not doing cross-tenant, generally maybe your like folders aren't like nested too far, we do recommend you start moving. But this could be a really slow move. You could start by just hiding that sync button. So it would just make it that all your users' new relationships are shortcuts. It won't affect the existing ones. And so like that's one good place to start. But again, like it sort of depends on your organization.
Yeah. And one final thing. So you mentioned that, of course, the way that it currently works is adds a shortcut, and the way that it names the folder of that shortcut kind of contributes a bit more to the file length issue and limitation. I think this would be resolved. Maybe one of the features that you mentioned was to have a specific folder for the shortcuts. In our case, currently the sync one, is a bit under the limit for the file length. And if we encourage people adding shortcuts, we already have a large name in the OneDrive folder, so this will exacerbate. So maybe do you have an ETA on, like a rough ETA on this dedicated folder, or any other solutions that would minimize this file length problem?
Yeah, so one of the file length issues that we know, I've just actually moved back here. It's right here. So this first one is the way like the sync button relationships show up. So like, at least this is on the sync side on the local desktop. You might have like the user profile, you have the tenant name, and then you'll have the site name, and then like the folder name. Because this is saved into your OneDrive, you'll have like a OneDrive dash, for example. So that adds like 11 characters. So it's definitely, if you're already at the max path limit, you're more prone to run into this. But this is really more about like a max path problem all up. It's not necessarily like a shortcut specific thing. We do know, again, for people who are really at that limit, it's going to be more evident. So we do have a lot of investments that we're working on to improve the max path handling, and encouraging users to rename things and giving like smart, easy suggestions to make that super easy one click. Not sure if that answers your question.
Yeah, that would be kind of useful. And do you have an ETA on the one with the dedicated folder, or just roughly maybe in a year?
Oh, so the dedicated folder, you mean like just like within the UX? In the organization?
Yeah, you mentioned earlier that in the file tree. I mean, there was one in one of the slides. It was mentioned that I think
so
it
like
was.
This. Yeah, we don't have an ETA on that yet. So we'll definitely share when we have more. I think in the interim, if you're really looking to organize, you could again move them into a specific folder. But again, you'd have to be cognizant of the fact that it does increase the path length.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. Next up is Ove, if I'm saying your name correctly.
Yes, that's correctly. Ove Briston from Net Integrate in Stockholm, Sweden. We have experienced an issue with add the shortcut to OneDrive on the SharePoint library that was configured with content approval. We could upload the files on the web, but we couldn't save it to File Explorer.
Sure. I've heard about that one, so I'd love to connect with you offline.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, next up is Joel. And Joel, if you're talking, we cannot hear you.
Yeah, it was awesome. This might be remedial, but I don't really understand the cleanup part of this when I'm switching from sync to shortcut. Can you explain that again?
Yeah. So what generally happens is you're first going to stop that sync relationship. The sync relationship, when you do that, it leaves behind folders and files that are hydrated or like locally available on the device. Once that sync relationship is like stopped, it's like severed, you can then go add that shortcut. And so from then forward, you'll want to just work out of the shortcuts that are in your OneDrive, but it can be confusing for users because they will still see some of those folders from the previously syncing relationship in like that tenant node, if that makes sense.
So if they don't clean up the file, they'll have two copies of the file then? Or is it the same file?
Yeah, on their device, they could have two if they had something that was hydrated, and then they like hydrate the one that's in the OneDrive as well. So on their device, they could have two. But in that shared content in the web, there should only be one in the cloud because you've stopped that sync relationship before. So the risk here is that a user doesn't realize that they still have like a copy that's in the old location. And for example, maybe they work out of that copy and those changes don't get uploaded.
So it's always safe after you've stopped sync to delete the folder and file.
Yes, key is stop the sync first. Yeah.
Okay, because it's just the synced copy that's sort of hanging out there. So you stop the sync, you always want to delete the file and folder that were being synced from the device locally, then set up the add to OneDrive or add to My Files. And are those the same, by the way? I noticed that it's called add to My Files on the web and add to OneDrive elsewhere. Is that the same thing?
Yeah.
And why do you have two different names for it? Because that's confusing.
So I think typically, and Lesha can correct me, it says add to OneDrive when you're in like a SharePoint team site or doclib. And when you're in someone else's OneDrive that maybe they've shared a folder with you, it's add to My Files.
Right. And even if you're in your own OneDrive and you're looking at folders that are shared by other people from your shared with you, or if you're like navigating to a document library from OneDrive, we want to make it clear that this is something that's going to add it to your My Files. That's why the difference.
Okay, but it's really always adding to your My Files, right? Everywhere.
Right. I think it's just that when you're in SharePoint, it's when you just say My Files, some people may not have the context of what that actually is.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to pull up a question from chat. Sulab was asking, if a shortcut is removed, are the always available files still left behind and hydrated?
When the shortcut is removed from the OneDrive? Is that the question?
I think that was the question.
Okay, so yeah, when the shortcut's removed from the OneDrive, I believe, and Carter or Guy, do correct me if I'm wrong, is that it does delete it from your device.
Yeah, clean them up.
Cool. All right, next up is Ashley.
Hi, everyone. I'm not sure if this question has been asked yet, but we've had a case recently. We're in the process of migrating our on-prem file shares to SharePoint. And because of these long file path names, once you migrate to SharePoint, you wouldn't really know that it's a long path until, say, you add that shortcut to your OneDrive per se. Then the situation now is there's some users who added those shortcuts to OneDrive, and then you get an error that there's like these long file path names, and then it will say open the target folder. And if you click, say, open folder, OneDrive will not sync. If you click try again, then OneDrive will basically shut down and none of the other shortcuts that you try to add will appear. So then basically OneDrive crashes at that point. Any recommendations there?
Yeah, so we're improving the handling of MaxPath, not specifically just for shortcuts, but in general in the client. So that's relevant to number 1 here on the list, so that it doesn't have that behavior where it just shuts down and is not helpful.
Okay, so still work in progress then.
Yeah, it's something we're working on.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for sharing the feedback.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is Joseph.
Hi, Stephen. Just wanted to check whether is there any way for us to find out what are all the OneDrive shortcuts that's been created using Graph API?
That's a good question. I don't believe that we have that right now, but definitely like fill out that form. Let us know if that's something that you're looking for. Would be curious to see if other folks are looking for that as well.
Okay. Is it which form?
Yeah, let me go back to the page. This one.
Thank you.
Perfect. All right. Next up, Pankaj.
Thank you. Just wanted to follow up on Monica's question earlier, if I think I got the name right. So I was about to ask exactly the same. So in what kind of reporting, governance, visibility, etc., if you can think of in that space, we would have as an admin across our tenant on, let's say, adoption of shortcuts, because it's not like people are not using it, it's a bad thing. But on the other hand, if they are syncing and and as we work through migration, if they are moving gradually, let's say if you do some outreach, etc., and is there making an impact? So I think I was still processing the whole and playing it out in my head, and I was trying to programmatically or out of the box reports or what else would be available. And I don't know if there are audit log events and everything else. So as an admin, what all will I see right away versus if there is anything coming in the near future, so that I can see where we are, where as we are progressing, is that making a difference? And then before you get to that 90-day notice time frame, if that's the, whenever that happens, have I traveled far enough that it will not impact, or, and then I can target the users and not to pick anyone. But if Stephen is the one who's not doing it and he's still syncing, then I can at least go back to Stephen and do some targeted outreach. So I'm just trying to play both as an administrative as well as maybe a change specialist role in this scenario.
Yeah. Great asks all around. I would say we've considered various tools that we could build. So one idea has been maybe in the sync admin reports. I know not everyone uses those. As you mentioned, we talked about putting in logs, maybe a command line tool. So there's a lot of options out there. And so we're very interested to hear from you and everyone else about what would be most useful. I was going to say one other thing and I totally lost my train of thought. I lost train of thought. But yeah, in general, we don't have anything to give you right now. There are things we know we want to add. We want to add the equivalent of the auto mount policy for shortcuts. And again, when we do this migration, we want to provide tools. We're also looking at just moving everyone else who remains at the end on your behalf. So like after a certain period of time has passed and you've been trying to do the migration, we've considered, would we just move everyone else that remains after a certain period? And if that's something that would be useful for you because you don't want to deal with it after a certain point, like definitely let us know.
I think, sorry, coming out of turn again, but just to react to it, I think I would like to manage it rather than leaving, and delegate or outsource that to you. So that's why I think to have any visibility would really help, and for various reasons, but just wanted to at least make it an explicit ask.
Yep, makes sense.
All right, we're going to go over to Ove again, and then after this question, we'll open up for all questions, so everything beyond shortcuts if you have them. So Ove, take it away.
Yeah. Okay. You showed us when you already have synced files, unsync them, and then add shortcut to OneDrive, and you presented with a note that it was showing that these are already synced. Will the local path of the file explorer be the same? You recognize what I say?
What do you mean by will the local path of the file explorer?
Yeah, when you sync files, the local path is under the company name and the document library. Yeah, and if you unsync that, if you stop syncing that, and then you add shortcut to OneDrive to the same library, will it be the same folder in the same path folder?
Yeah, so I think this might be your question. If not, let me know. So this first one here is, I think, the first scenario you're talking about. So when you're syncing it, it's under like the tenant name, then you have the site name and the folder. When you add a shortcut, it'll be in like a OneDrive dash, then the name. So it does increase that path length a little bit. So if you're really on the limit, it is something to be aware of. Yeah. I will say if you're on the limit where 11 characters is kind of the make or break, you're probably already kind of in a sticky situation. But yes, it'll be a little bit different.
Yeah. So it will be a totally new path to documents for the users when they open a document in Office, or if they open the document directly from say Excel or Word, it will be a different path. So the path in what previous files that you have opened will not be the same.
The path in the cloud stays the same. The path locally changes. So it depends. There's multiple ways of opening files from Office. So it depends on the scenario. So we can provide more details on those scenarios as a follow-up.
So this is something we need to inform the users that if they go from syncing to add shortcut to OneDrive, then they may experience problems when they open up previously edited document in Office. They need to change that.
We need to double check how Office handles that scenario, and we can share that as a follow-up.
Yeah, good. Okay. I'm fine. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Ove. I'm going to pull a question from earlier in the chat. Aaron asked if there was any other info in a future meeting or now about the transfer OneDrive ownership feature that was listed on the Microsoft roadmap.
Yeah, I can help take this. First, thank you for the question. We know this is a much awaited set of improvements. I will kind of recap the 3 things that are coming as part of the improvements there. And if you have any follow-up questions, happy to take that in chat, or feel free to raise them here. So as part of the improvements that we're planning, 3 parts. One is an improvement to the email design template itself for when someone leaves the tenant. and the person's manager or admin receives an email letting them know about the 30 or 90-day notice for access to that person's OneDrive. Today, that email has a lot to be desired. It looks quite poorly designed, and it often lands in spam folders. And so we want to make sure that that email gives a lot of confidence to the manager to be able to take action from within it. So that's one. Two, when the manager goes ahead and clicks on the call to action button within the email that says access the user's OneDrive, we're making a couple of UX updates within that experience as well when you land on the OneDrive web experience for it, where we're making it really simpler to find and access the shared content from that user's OneDrive, because that is more likely the content you want to keep in your tenant and the shared locations that you have. Maybe move them over to someone else's OneDrive, move them over to a shared document library. And so we'll have a simple filter to be able to get to that shared content, select that shared content, and then from within there, within the picker experience to then choose a location to move it to, we'll also have the ability to select, keep that content shared. Now, while the link will get updated when the file is moved from one site to another, that feature will make sure that folks who had the file previously shared to them will get the updated link in email as well. So our attempt here is to make sure two things for customers. One, that there's an easier workflow and user experience to actually manage that moment. And two, that folks who were dependent on the files in the user's OneDrive will, through this experience, hopefully get to continue to keep access in a new location for that content. And through all of this, the manager will continue to be in control over what to keep and what to potentially let go of. We are going to be able to release very soon. We are internally testing at this point, and so I don't want to promise a specific date yet, just as we get through those internal motions for quality. And as soon as we'll have more concrete dates to share, we'll go through the regular channels to update you all. Back to you, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. And we'll definitely look to go deeper here as we get closer. Let's see. Next up is Robert.
So I had a question I asked in the chat that you partially answered. Just wanted to try to get a little more clarity. So I'm the one that asked about like ballpark estimates on like performance improvements or quality improvements from like an end user experience point of view. I don't know if you have anything gathered where you could say like there's like an X percentage improvement in like speed, or there's like less crashes, things like that I can, bring to like my leadership team, because they're going to set, priorities for folks in my department on what IT projects to work on. So if there's like the more context I can give on this, I think that will help versus, saying, hey, Microsoft, some point is going to, fully deprecate this thing. And so we'll have to get to it eventually. But, if you can tie real world impact to it, that's going to, reprioritize that higher, in my opinion. So I didn't know if you had anything you could share at this time along those lines.
We don't have that, but that's a great call out.
Okay.
Something
is
that
there a way we
at.
could maybe do reporting on our end to gather that, where you're able to, because like for example, I know this is not the same thing, but like as like a Teams admin, like recently there was like a new page in the admin portal added where I can pull like the different version numbers for all the different like Teams clients, and it'll show in a neat way, like, okay, this is like the latest build, or you're like so many builds behind, or you're like so far behind, you're like out of support. There's similar things with like the Office desktop apps. And so if there's something that could be presented that way, that would also help.
Right. We have something similar around versions through the sync health reports, but it's not specific to shortcuts. So that would be something, as Kayla mentioned earlier, for folks, we're obviously recording notes, but if you have ideas like this, if you can fill out the form we send And I think it's a great idea, but it's not something we currently have.
Okay. Okay, got it. I'll do the form. I also have a CSA through like a pod team at Microsoft. I'll forward that to them so they can, potentially follow up with you on it if you want to. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Robert. Next up is Nikolai.
Hey, it's Nikolai from Coke again. My question was also related to what Arwa said that you guys are working on. And I just want to say that's a huge relief because this is, a lot of the complications we get as administrators that is, I think, pretty unnecessary. And even though it's nice, you guys are working on the convenience and, the message to the managers and their access. I see one thing that's the primary roadblock for us here, which I'm not sure if it's being addressed. And the primary difficulty of people leaders fulfilling that tasks as data custodians is the limit of moving data. So as you know, right now, there is 100 gigabytes limit per action for move and copy. And when you look at people's OneDrive, for example, different tenants have different limits, but we have like 5 terabytes. We have users who have 4, 8, 15 terabytes of data. And, even 800 gigabytes of data. And managers will receive this message and they will, most of them ask us to do it, but they will try, and they will see this error, this limit. First of all, the behavior of it is very bad in terms of notification. When you hit that limit, so let's say a manager goes into a user's OneDrive, selects like 5 folders that they need, and they click move, they just get this folder could be moved, just like, if they get a notification. If they put this on the background or switch the browser to a different thing to continue their work, they might not even see what the cause was for this unsuccessful move or copy attempt, and then they will naturally open a ticket or reach us to do it. And we obviously advise them how this is, what the limitations are, but at some point we start doing this monkey work of moving people's files around using a third-party solution. And I've been asking this for a while. Is there any plans for removing that limitation? Because as far as I know, these limitations are quite outdated. We've migrated to OneDrive like 2018, and even software that we used years before that did not have these limitations. So I think that would improve all of our work like in a major way. So are there any plans to implement something like that?
Yeah, thank you for that amazing feedback, Nikolai. I will say I wasn't aware of the limitation myself, and I'm going to follow up to understand if we have any plans to update that, and also if it's a hard limitation or something that happens during more throttle type moments. So yeah, let me follow up on that piece. I will say on the transfer ownership piece, it's really good feedback and something that we don't have in plans for the first round in terms of making sure if you select 10 gigs worth of content to move, that will just happen with a single action. I suspect what users will experience is the need to actually do batch moves. And to your point, if the error messaging isn't helpful enough to know why the error even happened, users won't be able to self-serve there to know to do batch edits. And so I think I take away another piece of feedback, which is better error messaging, at least in the meantime, to help users self-correct. I hope I've captured your notes there, and I have a couple of follow-ups back to the feature crew to make sure we're tracking all of that.
Yeah, thanks very much. It's a hard limit, by the way. It just stops. It's not a throttle.
Thank you for
anything you try for. Yeah. Thanks a lot for that. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Nikolai. All right, I think we've got time for one more question, and then we'll jump to a look at what's coming next. So, Siva.
Hi, Stephen. Yeah, thanks. My question is like a more general question, not related to this specific topic. So I have 2 questions. One is like about the UX, which is like if a file is checked out to another user because they're editing or whatever, is there any UX of any kind where we'll be able to find out who that file is locked out to? It could be because of various reasons where the editing app might have crashed or whatever, and the file remain in that state. And how do users know where it is stuck? like which user is editing, for example, right?
That's a great question. Arwa or Liz, are either of you familiar with the checkout feature more than I am?
I'm not. It's quite an old feature, and it's not one that we even encourage users to leverage today, just because co-auth is something that we want customers to be able to edit concurrently, and that's the path that we would encourage. And so I'm really curious about what gets users even into that state for your customers and how we can get them back into a regular path of not needing to check out.
Okay, so that leads me into my second question I was going to ask. And so to give you a very quick context without, in the interest of time, we have a desktop application that opens and reads files and so on and so forth. And our users' complaints were that the sync process on that machine gets into the way while the file is being read by our application and so on and so forth. So what we are looking for is some sort of an API on the desktop, whether it is C# or C++ or whatever the API might be, that our desktop application can leverage, where it can automatically pause, the sync behind the scenes and while we are using those files. And obviously, not every app and every file is this concurrent editing capable, you know what I mean? So it takes a lot of effort and, restructure the file format, etc., for it to be efficient in doing so, right? So not every file is, is cloud friendly in that way, right? So.
Yeah, I understand. Would it be worth, Gaia, for Seva to work offline with you to find the right path or recommendation for him?
Yeah, I'd love to learn more about the file types you're mentioning in the application. Often it's the application, there's certain guidelines of how to interact with files and the type of lock to take.
Right.
And we've worked with some applications to improve how they interact with files. But yeah, I would love to learn more offline.
Yeah, that would be great because it's very critical for us. We are actively working on a product, and I want to make sure that we use all the best practices and don't go against what the OneDrive product team is recommending. You know what I mean? Yeah. Yeah. So how do I connect in that case? Yeah.
Yeah, I can drop my email in the chat.
Sounds good. Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you, Seva. All right, we're a little bit over time. Thank you all for sticking with us. You can now register for next month's office hours, which will be on Windows File Explorer and how all the great work we've done integrating OneDrive there to make your experience delightful. So that'll be the third Wednesday of next month in July, which is next month. You can register now at aka.ms/OneDrive Office Hours. You can get the invite on your calendar and not miss it. The recording for this session will be available on the Microsoft Community Learning YouTube channel probably in the next week or so once that gets uploaded. And yeah, thank you all for joining. Thank you, Kayla and Lesha, for walking through all of this. Thank you all for your feedback. And yeah, looking forward to see you all next month.